children. Every single person in the world loves their children. It's the babies who are 20 times more sensitive to radiation than adults. It is a children's issue, this.
What we're doing here today is more important than the Vietnamese War. It's more important than dealing with racism, than dealing with sexism, than dealing with hunger, because I can feel hunger. I can see war. I can feel racism. I can feel sexism. I cannot see radiation. I cannot smell radiation. I cannot hear radiation. I look around one day and I am dead.
Atomic poison power away.
On May 6, 1979, 100,000 people gathered here on the lawn of the Capitol to protest against nuclear energy. It was a large demonstration. The evening news shows the masses of the people, but it doesn't show anything about the individuals. Who are these people? Why are they here? What motivates them? This is our story.
I don't know how to express it or identify myself in the sense of that level of involvement, other than that I was doing it for my children.
This story begins in the spring of 1978. Dr. Tom Wilson is a dentist. He lives in the small Massachusetts village of Shelburne Falls with his wife, Joan. She's a nurse practitioner. Their 15-year-old twins, Tom Jr. and Becky, and their youngest daughter, Kara. For the past year, he and his family have been protesting against nuclear power.
The threat to my health, to the environment, to people's well-being from a health point of view is the thing that I get most passionate about, I guess. Feeling like people really don't know enough about radiation, and if they did, then they'd share some of my concern, and they wouldn't allow nuclear power plants and our nuclear defense industry to be the way it is.
Scott Mendhart is a recent graduate of Amherst College. He's an organizer for a group called the Clamshell Alliance. In the spring of 1978, they were gearing up for a fourth demonstration against construction of the nuclear power plant in Seabrook. They were hoping to organize enough people to halt construction by illegally camping at this site, an act of civil disobedience. It was in Seabrook that the countrywide anti-nuclear movement really took root. At first, individuals who were concerned organized legal battles. Then they took to marches, rallies, and a town referendum in which the town voted no plant in Seabrook. But construction began nevertheless. As a result, in 1976, 18 New Hampshire residents walked down a railroad track onto the construction site and were arrested for trespass. Direct protests grew. Later that same summer, 200 New Englanders staged a sit-in on the site and were also arrested. The next year, over 1,400 people from all over the country were arrested. They were held in National Guard armories for 2 weeks. Scott, Tom, and his twins, Tom Jr. and Becky, were among those arrested. In the spring of 1978, the Clamshell Alliance was holding training sessions throughout the Northeast for another protest. This time, they were expecting over 10,000 people to commit civil disobedience, and the organizers wanted the participants to be prepared.
The structure this year is going to be different from last year, where we all went on in one group, mass group, about 2,500. Last year, we all marched onto this area right here. This is the parking lot, and we all held that area for the weekend, and then we were all arrested.
I think that that Scott's involved in two questions. One is the question of whether or not nuclear power is good or bad. And I think that's a very difficult question to answer. And I don't personally feel qualified to answer that question. But the other issue that I think Scott's involved in is the question of how to get the viewpoint of his group, or his Clamshell Alliance group, across to the public. And in my mind, that's a very simple question. I think what they're doing is wrong.
Knowing what the consequences are, with a willingness to suffer the consequences, it's a serious risk for me and for a lot of other people, many of whom are older, who have families, who have jobs, but they're willing to take that risk because they don't feel like they can go on living in a normal, everyday life when this threat of nuclear power is being permitted to grow and expand.
I've referred to myself as a closet no-nuker for a while because I think I felt that I had was a dimension where the economics of my dental practice could be threatened because of the number of people who work in the Royal Yankee Atomic Plant, and also people who work for the power company. And there are a lot in our community, and I felt that a high identification with the anti-nuclear movement might cause some of those people to, want to find a new dentist or something, which would, then I'd start thinking, well, if I lose all my patients, I won't have any income.
It's really difficult because you have strong convictions about a lot of things, and you just can't spread yourself out so thin that you're worthless. And I don't know what goes into making a person make the decision that this is where I'm going to pour my bodily energy, and not this. And Tom has decided that all the energy he has is going to go into not extra, but the energy when he's not making a living and working in the office and so forth has to go into to the anti-nuclear movement. And it takes a lot of time.
The Clamshell Alliance was committed to nonviolence. Following the tradition of people like Gandhi and Martin Luther King, they believed in expressing their beliefs without using force or damaging property. And they insisted that all demonstrators at Seabrook be trained in nonviolent techniques.
Okay, let me say a word or two about the water situation. If they're using the water hose, which is a good possibility they might decide to do this time, I would suggest that the group come together, turning their backs to the water, sit down and let your back, try to keep your clothes about you as tight as possible so that this water won't really tear you to pieces, and in this way try to address yourself to it.
Pressures mounted as the date for the demonstration grew closer. There were increasing threats of violence and fears of police brutality. Although Tom and the twins had been among the 1,400 arrested in 1977, this time they were afraid it was going to be different.
The safety of Becky and Tom. And not having obviously a clear idea of what may happen.
If I occupy, it's one more person. I mean, if, 100 people could be saying, well, I don't want to occupy because of so-and-so, and I'm just one more person, It all adds up. And I think occupying, for me, is more important than, handing out pamphlets at a supermarket and stuff.
I feel really positive about that part of it, but I still feel that if your lives are endangered, that would be where I would have to draw the line, even though the rest of it was really positive.
Well, I get scared about that too, our lives being endangered, and my fears of what could happen, like stuff like, gas, and I think that's probably what I fear most is gas.
Tensions were rising. When there were only 2 weeks to go before the demonstration, the state of New Hampshire and the utility company made a surprise offer. They would open the construction site for a legal two-day rally and provide a stage and other logistical support. This offer produced a severe split among the clamshell demonstrators and local supporters. There were prolonged and soul-searching discussions, and finally an acceptance.
So I think I'll just tell you about the RAF and the outlines of our acceptance with the state, because everything that we do is really, from the 24th through the 26th, is really bound by our good faith agreement with the state. We're asking people to talk within your affinity groups, feel good about this, agree to it. If you cannot agree to it, we're asking you not to come.
I'm really relieved. It's almost as if everything worked out just the way I would have liked it to. But, and I don't even, yeah, I just, the minute that I heard that it was going to be legal, I decided not even to think about where it would have gone, because I was just so relieved at not having to work through that.
It was hot that Saturday morning as Scott and the Wilsons joined other demonstrators marching onto the site. They had to carry in drinking water and supplies for 2 days. The plan was to have Saturday to set up camp and meet. Sunday was for the general public, and an all-day rally with speakers, music, and renewable energy displays was planned. Before Saturday was over, more than 7,000 from all parts of the United States had made their way onto the site.
Will your voice here this weekend and the voices of these people change what's happening here at Seabrook?
Sure. Every voice does something. We learned that during the opposition of the war in Vietnam. Every letter to the governor, every letter to the president, every letter to your senator, to your representative, every participation in a demonstration does some good. The main thing is to keep doing something and not get discouraged. This is a very winnable battle, the battle against nuclear power, I feel. And I hope that people like the governor of New Hampshire is listening and recognizing that the tide is setting against him. What right has he to listen to the utilities and not listen to the people of this neighborhood, who've twice voted against having any such plant here?
Peter?
What? Sure did. Home, sweet home. Yeah, put the thing down.
All right, let me unpack myself.
To be neutral, even though we may have strong feelings of our own, that someone should be here without a button on who is neutral. As observers, we don't think anything's going to happen because of the way it's been so well organized, but should something happen, it's good to have neutral observers.
And the very quiet here, I think, is probably one of the most important statements the group is making to the general public, that nonviolence is a way of saying something.
Wait a minute. There's going to be a meeting tomorrow morning at 9:30, and it's going to discuss 3 questions. Whether or not we should occupy now, meaning tomorrow, Monday at 3 p.m., whenever. Whether or not we should continue using the clamshell system, or we should remake the clamshell alliance. And the 3rd question is whether or not we should form a new organization. That has got to be discussed tonight. Affinity groups are meeting tomorrow at 9:30, right over where they're playing ball over there. Okay? And
a split developed between the demonstrators. Should they abide by the agreement, or should they remain on the site illegally after the 2-day rally? Saturday night, the Wilson family, Scott and Lynn, met with their affinity group in the teepee they had set up earlier in the day. Under the light of a kerosene lamp, they discussed the situation.
Tom and I, when we were doing that training, one thing we tried to get people to think about, because we had this report that PSC had done for them about the way to deal with demonstrators is to take away the opposition and let them party themselves out, let them get bored and frustrated, and they'll go home, because people like big display, they like a big media splash, a big force of opposition, the other people being foolish. That's how they get their point. So what Rath did was he opened the site to us. He did exactly what their academic guy suggested to them. They took away our force of opposition, so that we're floundering around here in our own sense of why we're here, and we have to work that out for ourselves.
Something out of the past experience with clamshell has worked. Whether that's still working or it's going to work in the future, I don't know. But it's, you know, it's worked, and I don't want to see that work undone in the process of continuing to work towards a nuclear-free future.
We're serious. Look,
On Sunday morning, the demonstrators decided to keep their part of the agreement. Spirits were high as more and more people congregated on the site. In the end, there were 20,000, including lots of children and babes in arms.
This has been a steady stream in all morning.
Is it really true that there were 8,000 yesterday?
They gave out about 8,000 armbands. That means, you know...
That doesn't count.
That doesn't count the
They
public.
said there were another 2,000 on the site yesterday who left.
We're seizing this land with a vision, exposing the PSC shams. So let's sing of my happy condition, surrounded by acres of land. Surrounded by acres of plants, my friends, surrounded by acres of plants. So let's sing of our happy condition.
Monday morning, the demonstration ended. No one stayed on the site. But the Wilsons, Lynn, Scott, and many others continued on to another march in Manchester, New Hampshire.
Rush job of cleaning up our campsite this morning. Taking down the teepee and all. They brought the bulldozers in right at 7 o'clock.
The Nuclear Regulatory Commission was holding hearings in Manchester on the safety of the design of the cooling system of the Seabrook plant. A decision by the NRC whether or not to halt construction was imminent, and the demonstrators felt that their presence was important.
I think they should wash up and get out of town. It's a real shame to see that. I'm not for it at all.
Isn't that a shame? They think they can run the country. They can't even run their own life. This is a new generation.
They're going to build it anyways, right? I guess solar energy is better. What are you going to do? You can't beat City Hall.
I've been pro-nuclear. Always have been, until the last half hour. And I'm beginning to wonder. They do really present some questions that I can't answer.
Later that week in Washington, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission announced its decision.
The Nuclear Regulatory Commission, by divided vote, today ordered suspension of the construction permits for the Seabrook Nuclear Power Plant in New Hampshire, effective at 6 p.m. July 21, on the grounds that this action is necessary to protect NRC's freedom to decide on alternatives to the Seabrook site.
The issues of alternate sites and the issues of cooling systems are important, but they are insignificant in comparison with the most important issues: radioactive waste disposal, nuclear accidents, and other unanswered questions that threaten our lives, our communities, our children, and future generations. But the significance of this decision lies not in the decision itself, it lies in the process by which it was reached and the unprecedented outpouring of citizen opposition and citizen concern that made this possible.
The suspension of construction of the Seabrook plant lasted less than a month. By mid-August, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission had reversed its decision and construction of the plant had begun again. Now, in March of 1979, the clamshell attempted to stop the massive reactor core from getting to the site.
Hey, I'll tell you, when a policeman back there tried to tell me that I was breaking the law by walking on the highway, I felt really legitimate telling him that I felt this thing was breaking the law.
We're riding and marching and standing and vigiling and blockading and occupying and rallying and mourning and doing everything that we possibly can to prophesy what nuclear power, what damage nuclear power can do to our society. And it's my patriotic duty. What can I say?
Curious to see how they're going to get rid of all these people, because, well, this is how they're going to do it. That's a familiar cry.
Public highway, you'll be arrested.
Tom and Scott chose not to be arrested. Tom felt his commitment to his dental patients had priority, and Scott was now having questions about the usefulness of his being arrested. He decided his time was better spent organizing in the local community where he lived in Maine.
It's a dreadful, dreadful, dreadful thing. I'm scared of it.
Me too.
The news from the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania nuclear energy plant is much more serious tonight. For the first time today, an official of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission said there is the possibility, though not yet the probability, of what is called a meltdown of the reactor core. That would be, in plain language, a catastrophe.
Based on advice of the chairman of the NRC and in the interests of taking every precaution, we've advised those who may be particularly susceptible to the effects of radiation, that is, pregnant women and preschool-aged children, to leave the area within a 5-mile radius of the 3 Mile Island facility until further notice.
The accident at 3 Mile Island really changed the mood of the country about nuclear power. The voices of long-time protesters now were joined by many thousands of new ones. In Washington, D.C., 100,000 people gathered on May 6, 1979.
I say to you today, when you leave here, you have to give radiation an odor. You have to give radiation a sound. You have to give radiation a smell. So go back into your communities and be willing to go to jail if it comes to that, because I'd rather see you in jail with the jails filled up than the graveyards running over.
In her hometown of Shelburne Falls, Joan and a friend organized an anti-nuclear vigil. They stood for an hour every Sunday morning in the center of town to express their concern about nuclear power.
I think I've been surprised at people who have expressed support there have been people who have stopped and said, you know, I really think this is a fine thing you're doing, and people that I would not have expected to do that. People who have come to join us that I wouldn't have expected to do that. So Tom has been here every week. I mean, he's very much in support of it, and he would be here today if he weren't at Vernon getting arrested.
I'm a dentist. This is preventive medicine. I'm a father. This is saving for the future. This is a desperate time. I carry a sign around. I must look like some kind of penitent going up the road with a sign that says, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit our nuclear waste."
Why do you feel it's necessary to bring it to the point of civil disobedience to make the point?
Because I'm standing here talking with you. And you're going to be coming into people's houses by way of television like you did with body counts during the Vietnam War. You'll be doing a body count. How many people got arrested? It's not a body count mentality anymore. It's a life mentality. What can I say? Well, I don't want my kids to have to go through what I've been going through for the last 2 years, trying to shut these things down. It's hard work.
You're going to leave now, you're going to ask to leave?
We had a nice conversation a few minutes ago, and I appreciated talking to you about, at that time, about nuclear power. Thank you.
After being arrested in Vernon, Vermont, 15 miles from his home, Tom went the next day to the Yankee atomic plant in Rowe, Massachusetts, only 7 miles from home. Here he staged a solitary appeal to his neighbor and dental patient, the plant manager.
I'd just soon not have again become a forum
I don't
for
want to do
a
that.
controversy.
This is more personal.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've been learning about nuclear issues for the last 2 years. And basically the hardest thing that has to happen is to ask people who have dedicated their lives to the development of nuclear technology to turn away from it into another area, because that's like saying, look, you got to give up this job and get another one, and that's life-wrenching. I brought some pictures of my kids along because we've spent some time together protesting nuclear power plants, as you probably know, me and my children, and I know your kids. I've watched them grow up. I know how important they've been to you because you've talked to me about how important they are, and you know how important my children are to me. And what I'm doing is for my kids.
I think we're both aware of the issues that are involved. There's many, many people, scientists and engineers, very intelligent people who are on the side of pro-nuclear power, and there are quite a few people who are on the side of the opposition.
Herb, what are you going to do with the waste?
There are solutions coming up. There are no dangers in the present mode of storage, and we could argue
You've got
for a long...
containers. It's not an argument. I don't want to argue either. I'm desperate. I desperately appeal to your humanity, to at least not actively promote any further development of nuclear technology. I realize the scope of asking you to do that. And I don't take an arrest situation personally. I don't take it lightly. I don't like it. I don't want to. If it becomes part of my job today, I guess that's what it'll be. And I don't want to take up your time. Okay. If I step over the line?
Yes, you would.
Thank you.
Doctor?
Yes, sir.
You're under arrest for trespassing.
Joan, hi. How you doing? Yeah, what's going on? Well, it's going to be a long day, I guess, down here. So, but I heard that people were, you know, getting arrested and coming back. So it's apparently a pretty quick checkout. So what should we do? Okay, what are you going to do? Okay. All right, I'll stay down here, all right?
On the 50th anniversary of the crash of Wall Street, Tom and other protesters tried a new strategy. They went to New York's financial district with their argument that nuclear power plants were economically unsound.
The way I feel about it, they have a right to demonstrate, you know, if they feel that it's not safe. But you're demonstrating, what's the other alternative? Let's have something, you know, come up with something that's better than this, you know?
Do you think they're going to prove anything by doing this? Actually, let's face it. Are they going to prove anything by doing this?
Doesn't do any good.
I think that the demonstrators are showing remarkable constraint, and that the police is showing remarkable constraint, and that it's a very, very good exercise in democracy.
The hot air is going to keep the wheels of industry going?
Not this hot air. Not mine. My energy, but not my hot air.
It takes a lot more than that.
Sure. There's going to be a solution that you're going to have to find right here in the city. I'm finding it where I live, out in the country. But they want to put nukes out there, and they say, oh, we don't want to put them near the city. Plenty. They're dangerous. Radiation is dangerous. It burns, it changes cells, it hurts people, hurts children. I don't have a choice about this stuff.
The police gave Tom simply a citation for this arrest on Wall Street. For his protest in Roe, however, he went to trial and was convicted of criminal trespass, and he received a 6-month probationary sentence. His previous arrests had not led to any charges or convictions. Scott, on the other hand, ended up spending 2 weeks on a prison farm for his arrest at Seabrook 2 years earlier. Now, in 1980, Scott became an organizer for a statewide referendum to vote to close down Maine's only nuclear power plant.
Okay, take care. Thanks, Michelle. These two, you got them, Al? It's close. It's really close. The referendum is working in the mainstream with very traditionally oriented people, and it's been very obvious that any step you can take to dispel a traditional stereotype is going to be to your advantage. People use stereotypes, unfortunately, as crutches in their perceptions of people to discredit them and to create distances and avoid just dealing with real people. It'd be wonderful if everybody dealt with just the real person and, you know, overcame the differences of opinion and presentation and clothing. And I still drive an old car, and I don't wear a tie very often, but I've got short hair and I don't have a beard, and it's just been a matter of choice about what's the most effective way of presenting yourself to avoid those kind of damaging stereotypes.
Our top story is the apparent defeat of the referendum to ban nuclear power in Maine. News 13's latest vote tally is as follows. With 81% of the precincts, and that's 539 of 665 precincts, there are 110,467 yes votes, 156,522 no. Of course, the no votes mean voters want to keep nuclear power in the state.
Mainers vote to keep nuclear power by a margin exceeding 3 to 1, 3 to 2 rather, 3 to 2. 230,780 vote no against prohibiting nuclear power, and 159,761 vote yes to prohibit. That's not bad. 159,000 people never showed up at Seabrook. But I felt good about what it's meant for me the last 4 years. It's certainly given me a good sense of purpose and usefulness and direction, and I've described it to people as in a way my time of doing service to my country or to the things I believe in.
In 1981, Tom took his anti-nuclear protest one step further. He refused to pay his federal income tax as a protest against government spending on nuclear arms proliferation.
We're working to not pay for the last and ultimate of medical disasters. from a healthcare point of view, I just can't. I can't say it any stronger than trying to prevent some epidemic of insanity that would lead to somebody using a nuclear weapon, which would then unleash uncontrollable forces, and that would our whole social fabric would be gone. Everything would be gone. This year will be basically the first year that I would officially refuse to pay, and I'm putting the money into an alternative fund. I owe $444, and I realize it's a hell of a risk because it involves the economic livelihood and economic survival and well-being of my family. That creates a lot of stress. Joan's under stress the same way about this as she is to participation in the anti-nuclear movement at the point of an arrest situation.
In the summer of 1981, the members of the Wilson family were moving in different directions. Tom is now the only active anti-nuclear protester.
I think that things are going to be plenty stable enough and changeable enough in my future that he doesn't have to sacrifice his life.
I'm glad that he's still doing it, but a lot of kids tease me at school and everything. Like, they get in front of me and they say, "Go nukes, go nukes," and they try to, like, if they're mad at me, they get back at me by criticizing no nukes, which I think is not very fair. Because why should they criticize me when it's my father? Not my fault.
I don't have a right to sacrifice my family's happiness in order to shut down nuclear power plants. But I have a responsibility to continue to do basically what I have to do. And it's because people come up and say, "Thank you for doing that," that I know I'm doing the right thing. And I have to keep doing it because I'm doing it for them.
Just give me the warm power of the sun. Give me the steady flow of the waterfall. Give me the spirit of living things as they return to play. Just give me the restless power of the wind. Give me the comforting glow of the wood fire. But please take all your atomic poison power away. Won't you do this for me? Take all your atomic poison power